Hi everybody, thanks very much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at MedCommsNetworking.com. That's information services, activities, resources, freely available to the global MedComms community, by which I'm basically talking about people who work in or around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing. So if you haven't been there before, have a look. There's lots going on, including these weekly webinars at the moment. We also have resources like at NetworkPharma TV, where all being well, we'll record today's webinar and we'll put the recording up on NetworkPharma TV. You'll find 300 plus videos there now of all sorts, not just these sorts of webinars. So there's some good content there. And for those of you who are interested in joining the MedComms business, you'll find a whole resource at firstmedcommsjob.com, where you'll find all sorts of articles, careers guides and stuff. So there's plenty to go and look at. But today, this webinar, we're very happy to have the Porterhouse Medical Advisory Group with us. And I'm quite keen on this, I must admit. I was looking forward to this, and I have specifically asked you to come along because I'm quite keen to get a view from the medics in the industry. There aren't quite as many medics as some people think. So Beth and Jessica and Natasha, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to hand over to you, a little presentation, and then we're going to open this up for a Q&A. So audience members, be ready to ask your questions. Beth, over to you. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Peter. Hi, everybody. So I guess what I thought I'd start off doing today is I'll tell you a little bit about my own background. Then we'll go through a few slides, just explaining a little bit about Porterhouse. Natasha and Jess will then tell you about their journey to MedComms from medicine, and we'll finish up with the slides. And then, as Peter mentioned, we'll go to some Q&A, which should be good. I look forward to your questions. So my background, I qualified in 2001, which is almost 20 years ago now this August, and sort of started off working in, I did A&E general medicine for about sort of 4 years, 5 years. And then I went into histopathology and did that for 10 years, mostly based around Oxford. And loved what I did, loved the medicine, have always loved the medicine, particularly the science. Not a lot of patient contact with histopath, but you know, I had my time with patients and always loved that side of it as well. You know, I feel like I'm a good communicator, so that was always good. And then I guess after 15 years, I sort of got to the point where I thought, oh gosh, yeah, I'm not really sure if this is really what I want to keep doing. What else is out there? I know I've always enjoyed writing. I obviously have done a lot of writing of reports and stuff with my medical work, and knew that I could string a few words together in a coherent way, more or less. So I thought, well, it would be really nice to maybe explore that a little further, and obviously had other colleagues who had left medicine over my time of knowing them, who'd gone into medical writing and spoke highly of it as a profession. And had a little sort of look into various things online, looking at sort of medical writing or medical communications agencies. And that's where I came across Porterhouse, which is where I currently work and have been working the last few years. So just to tell you a little bit about Porterhouse. So it's basically, we're, as I say, sort of a medical communications group. And this is our sort of our corporate sort of profile, that we give powerful, insight-driven scientific and medical communication services to the pharma industry globally. So we have clients globally, with a focus on solutions that can have a significant and measurable impact on healthcare professionals as well as patients. And I'm always sort of, at the back of my mind is always the fact that there's a patient at the end of this. You can't ever lose sight of that. And yeah, that's always at the forefront of my mind. So Porterhouse itself, what's it like working at Porterhouse? Well, I have to say, what really drew me to the company when I first started doing my research online was the 4 values that we really genuinely do abide by. So proud and passionate we are at Porterhouse. We absolutely are passionate about our work, proud to do the best job that we can, and also proud of our colleagues and how wonderfully we all work together. And that kind of brings me on to a shared spirit of entrepreneurship and ambition. you know, everybody is keen to promote everybody else's strong points, to help everybody further their own professional development, and get, you know, sort of be conversant within the field of pharma, particularly as for someone like me, you know, I hadn't come from that world. So it was lovely to be with people who I felt had my back, for want of a better word. Together as a family, we grow and flourish. I guess that sort of falls off the back of what I've just said. We all work very much together. There's a really great ethos at the company of, you know, people trying to fit around other people's schedules. You know, some of us have children, some of us want to work part-time. There are all sorts of reasons that people have different setups that they require, and we try and accommodate that as best we can. And humour and happiness in our working lives. I mean, quite honestly, if you can't have a laugh at work, what's the point? Yeah, so after working in MedComms for a while and getting my sort of writing skills and things up, I sort of started to really feel like there was a real necessity for clinical perspective in a lot of the projects that we undertake. And because the impact of what we produce for clients is so far reaching, and there are lots of benefits for patients with these interactions that we have through our clients with HCPs, healthcare professionals, I thought, gosh, how can we sort of channel this sort of medical expertise, for want of a better word? And so I initially started my role as medical advisor at Porterhouse to provide that perspective. And gradually we started recruiting more doctors. We've now got 5. And in 2018, we actually formed what is now properly called the Medical Advisory Group. You can see our 5 members from Porterhouse on this slide here. So at this point, I'm just going to hand over to Natasha and Jess to talk to you a little bit about their journeys.
Hi everyone, so I'm Natasha, one of the senior medical writers at Porterhouse. I studied medicine at Bristol and graduated in 2018. I think I had my doubts very early on during my medical degree, actually, that clinical medicine might not be for me. I was one of the very few students who enjoyed preclinical training more than clinical training, which was a pretty big red flag early on, I think. I really enjoyed learning about the underlying scientific principles of disease, so decided actually to pursue that further and intercalated in biochemistry during my degree, which was very interesting, but I realized that that was probably a step too far in the other direction. Laboratory work wasn't for me either, and I knew that I definitely didn't want to do that long term, but I was glad I did the intercalation in biochemistry just to rule that out, basically. So I went back into medical school after that, and did all of the different rotations through the clinical years, hoping that I'd come across one that was the right specialty for me. But I think as time went on, I realized that clinical medicine just wasn't what I wanted to be doing long term. So I ended up withdrawing from the application process for the foundation doctor program, and instead started looking for other jobs. And that's when I came across medical writing just on a job website, actually. So sorry, I've just seen the comment from Samuel about saying that I'm a rare breed, enjoying preclinical more than clinical. I very much was one of the few. I was very aware of that. But yeah, I came across medical writing on a job website, and it just seemed to be the perfect middle ground for me. It allowed me to still use my scientific background, still communicate with people, but removed potentially some of the uncertainty that I felt with clinical medicine. So I've now been working at Porterhouse for 3 years as a medical writer, and I actually really love it. I feel like I'm still able to put my clinical training to good use. I feel like I get to delve into the science that I really love, get to still interact with people on a daily basis, and it's very varied in the job. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of us get into medicine in the first place, is to kind of keep things interesting every day. So I really do love that medical writing provides that side too.
Thanks, Natasha. So thank you for inviting us to speak today. So my name's Jess, and I'm the newest member of the Medical Advisory Group. So I joined Porterhouse in September of last year. So I graduated from the University of Liverpool in 2018 and then worked as a foundation doctor in Birmingham. So during my foundation training, I worked in rotations in paediatric rheumatology, colorectal, diabetes and endocrine GP, and also more recently as a member of the research and development team and with a group of nurses and doctors in the COVID-19 trials. So I think that the reason why I decided to leave clinical medicine is I was getting to the point where I was having to think about specialty training and what specialty I wanted to go into. And I think similar to Natasha, this was a part that I didn't know, and no matter how much experience I got in the different therapy areas, I didn't know what I wanted to do long term. And I also started to then think that actually maybe clinical medicine for me long term again wasn't necessarily the right thing for me. So I started looking at alternative careers. I think again, similar to Natasha and Beth, I knew that I enjoyed writing, and I also still wanted to use the knowledge and skills that I'd gained throughout uni and also actually working as a doctor. And I also wanted to just keep communicating. I think that this is something that I know that I really enjoyed and I didn't want to lose that aspect. So that's really what led me to look at MedComms and also Porterhouse. So when I looked at Porterhouse already, the MAG was already formed, and I looked at this group and I thought, that sounds brilliant to be working with a group of doctors to help both colleagues and clients. And I just thought that it sounded like that would be a really great first step, and it's definitely lived up to its expectations and more. So that's my story.
Thanks, Jess. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, we've come from, you know, a range of different backgrounds. Natasha's, you know, from medical school, Jess from sort of foundation years, you know, me far more ancient. It really, you can really join at any point. I think that's sort of the story, the line behind that, really. But I guess talking about our medical advisory group, or MAG as we are affectionately or otherwise known at work. So I guess what do we actually bring to clients? And I think, as you've heard, we have this range of expertise. So we've got, you know, histopath, oncology, ENT, peds, rheumatology, general practice. I mean, it's a phenomenal sort of breadth of experience, and obviously with that comes depth as well. And I guess what we feel is we can provide these sort of shop floor insights from our sort of clinical experience to our colleagues as well as to our clients, so that we can, all communications that we produce can be really impactful. And because we've got this sort of innate understanding of what healthcare professionals and patients are looking for, in new therapeutics over a range of multiple disease areas, we hope to find the best strategy to leave a lasting impact on these prospective prescribers and on patients. And because in some cases we've seen the other side of training programs or sales strategies, the other thing we can do is we've got that sort of unique insight into how to tailor projects, or how to advise clients that we can tailor our projects to target our audiences to the best effect. I'm just going to hand over. There's the next slide.
So I guess for those of you with a medical background who may be thinking about careers outside medicine, why choose MedComms? So being a medical writer, it allows you to combine scientific knowledge with a passion for writing to ultimately improve patient care. And as I referred to earlier, I think that a lot of us did get into medicine because of the variety that it offers in the day-to-day job. And actually, that is possible with a career in medical writing too. It's very varied. You have the opportunity to work with different clients across different disease areas, across different drugs, and on a wide variety of projects too. There's a complete spectrum of project types, which ranges from maybe more creative projects, such as marketing materials for new drugs that are coming out, to more scientific projects, such as publications for medical journals. So there really is something for everyone. And as well as that, I do think it's important to highlight that you really do have an opportunity to interact with lots of people in medical writing as well. This was something I loved about medical school. I actually loved interacting with patients and getting to meet new people. And as a medical writer, you get to do that by interacting and developing relationships with clients, interacting with key opinion leaders in various therapy areas, and interacting with a wide variety of healthcare professionals from different backgrounds. So it really does allow you to kind of use the skills that you develop with a medical background, and actually clinical experience is extremely valuable and a very valuable asset as a medical writer, which Jess is now going to speak a bit more about.
Thanks, Natasha. So I think this slide really summarises what Beth and Natasha have just spoken over. So I think that there are many advantages of having a medical degree as a medical writer. So a doctor brings unique insights. So as Beth mentioned, we work with healthcare professionals within many multidisciplinary teams and also patients from different disease areas. So we do have an understanding of what would be well received by these groups and in these different therapy areas. And I think that that's really valuable to the work that we do. And then we obviously bring the knowledge that we have, the medical knowledge. So this is useful the whole way through projects and is actually even useful before a project begins, because we can share these insights and understanding, similar to what Beth said, to inform the initial discussions around a project. And because we do have this such broad range of experience from histopathology to paediatrics, we can really bring that to the work that we do for both our own work, the work that we are helping to provide insights in with our colleagues, and ultimately provide a really valuable resource for clients too.
So I guess I just wanted to finish up by talking about Porterhouse as part of the IMC group, Integrated Med Health Communication Group. So we're actually part of a group of agencies, and I guess the way to see us is like a one-stop shop. So we sort of pooling the resource from sort of multiple areas of expertise. So obviously we have us as medics, and there are medics in each of the groups as well, who can contribute all the insights that we've been talking about today. But also we offer a sort of full range of omni-channel communications, and we provide insights, but also medical compliance services to span an entire drug life cycle across all therapeutic areas. So really within our group, there is a huge breadth of project type, expertise required, and there really is something for everybody. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, is that me back? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, no, thank you very much, Beth and Natasha and Jessica. Thank you very much. And now we're going to have a bit of a Q&A. Members of the audience, and we've got a useful number of you out there, so please do join in here. But just as a reminder, you've got a chat button and a Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. They'll both call up text boxes. Text in your questions and comments, as some of you have started to do, and we'll weave that into the discussion, okay? So let's see how this goes. I want to start with, I'm going to say what I think I started by saying, actually, which is that there don't seem to be many medics in MedComms, right? And I get a number of people coming to me, particularly like in the old days when we used to run face-to-face careers meetings, and the discussion used to be quite a bit broader maybe than online, and people would sort of sidle up and they go, I don't understand, do I have to be a medic in order to be a medical writer? Or alternatively, I'm a medic. There don't seem to be many medics here. I suppose one question I just wanted, I think you all actually nodded as I said that, but just to get a sense from you, because I think you've all just worked at Porterhouse, but in the wider MedComms arena, do you meet other medics? Have you found other medics? I know you've got a bigger group there in IMC. Are there many medics out there? Just give us a sense of that, or have I missed the point completely? Are there loads of them out there? I just haven't come across them, sort of thing. Just give me a sense. But Beth, you've been around a bit. Have you seen many medics?
Yes, there are absolutely other medics. We're a little bit fewer and further between than, as you suggest, within other agencies. You do come across a lot of medics on the client side and the pharma side, because obviously a lot of medics go into that side of things too. But there are medics around, and I think, you know, it just depends on, people have all different motivations for changing career from medicine, and as I think we've all alluded to in our own ways, it's not a decision that one takes lightly. But certainly from what you were saying, careers fairs and things, yes, it's medical writing, you don't have to be a medic, but certainly being a medic brings its own unique attributes that can contribute to a huge range of things over for clients, colleagues, as we've alluded to.
Okay. So we're agreed on that one. And the other point I was going to make was, we're talking, you're all medics, but you're medical writers. And there are medics in the industry who aren't medical writers. They are medical advisors or consultants, or there are other roles around in MedComms. So I suppose all I'm going to say on that one is, you know, people looking at this, do be aware that there's a wider range of roles, and there are medics in other roles, sort of thing. But we are specifically talking about the medical writers here. And it's interesting, again, as you're talking, I'm thinking a lot of the time I'm talking maybe to PhD postdoc types, and they're very strong on the writing, or they believe they're very strong on the writing because they've written a load of stuff. They've written a thesis, they've written papers, whatever. And sometimes the problem is explaining that actually it might be a good sign that they enjoy that, but they're going to have to learn to be a MedComms writer, as it were. Okay. But what other what other trans skills? What the damn's word? Sorry, the word's gone from my mind. You know, the trans. Say again.
I suffer from that too.
Oh, the word's completely gone out of my head, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. The skills that you bring across, you know, like the project management of the budget, transferable. Thank you, Michael. There you go. I don't mind. I can make a fool of myself. Okay, the transferable skills that come across. I think that's interesting. Listening to you all talk, I think you've all talked about a passion for writing, an interest in writing, but you haven't, unless I'm missing the point, you haven't individually done lots of publications or written big theses or something like that. So can you just explain a little bit? And one of the questions came straight in, how do I know, you know, I like writing, but how do I know if that's, you know, good enough, sort of thing? I'm going to bounce around a bit. Jessica, you've only just relatively recently come in. Why do you like writing? What is it in your background that, and what writing experience have you got, or that you could demonstrate? Or is that not important? Because actually it's the communication skills and the medical background that's important. You see, I'm just trying to get a bit of an interesting, different view on the balance of skills that you're bringing in. Jessica, I'm going to go with you first.
I think that definitely the communication skills and that side of things are definitely important. But I think to be a medical writer, you ultimately do have to want to enjoy writing, because that is what you'll be doing a lot of. I think for me, so you're completely right. So I don't have loads of publications or actually that much like writing experience, but it was something that we obviously do throughout university. So writing reports, special study modules and that sort of thing. And I think that I always went, whenever we could say like choose our own project, I would always steer more to like a more writing type of project rather than a clinical based project. And then I was actually quite lucky to be able to be involved with writing some like standard operating reports in hospital, which was with a team of doctors. And I think that actually that was something that I really enjoyed, using literature and also the medical knowledge of these experts and putting all of this together. And this is probably something that really, when it really clicked, actually I am really enjoying this writing side, but also using my medical knowledge whilst doing this. I think that's my experience. So as I say, not tons and tons of writing, but definitely to have an interest in writing and know that that's the direction that you want to end up in is definitely useful. I don't know if that's Tasha.
I was going to say, Natasha, you picked that one up, Natasha. From your point of view, would you could just concur with all that's just been said, or what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I would say I had a very similar experience to Jess. So during medical school, whenever I had the chance, whenever I saw the opportunity, I chose to do kind of research projects, which ultimately resulted in writing out reports or audits or things like that. And again, steered towards the more scientific projects rather than the more clinical ones wherever I could. So I think through those, I realized that I enjoyed writing, but again, I wouldn't say that I have a wealth of experience, or I wouldn't have had a wealth of experience before I came in to MedComms. I guess as doctors, we train for years to learn how to communicate with others and how to speak to people and find what will resonate with different people. And I think that skill is enough. So if you have that skill to be able to get through to other people and combine that with an interest in actually writing, I think that's all you really need to come into MedComms.
Okay, but that's an interesting point, because lots of the PhDs will say, all I need to get into MedComms is an ability to write 6 papers or something, which I've done. So there's a process to go through, and there's more to it than that, isn't it? So Beth, just again, I'm covering maybe some obvious points here, but if you're bringing people into the team as writers, you're going through the usual process of writing tests and so on, are you? So you are trying to basically test for an adequate writing ability, but so yes or no, and what are you looking at beyond that? So just again, try and compare and contrast a little bit how you might, a PhD coming in versus a medic coming in. Are there differences in the way that you would be interviewing them, testing them, and so on? Can you give me a sense of that?
So I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, fundamentally, as Tash and Jess have said, you have to be able to write, and you will be given a writing test. I think I saw a question pop up about do you need to have a qualification in writing or something like that. No, you don't have to have a qualification in writing. You just will be given a writing test, and very often that will involve distilling information from multiple sources into one piece, which is exactly what you'd be expected to do working as a medical writer. And that kind of gets you through the door to the point of interview. And then really, I suppose, you will bring very different skills, or some very different skills, as a PhD to as a medic. But communication is important, because you will be communicating via the written word for absolutely certainly. And if you choose to, there'll be verbal communication in the form of client communication. So it's great if you can form a rapport with a client, because at the end of the day, we sort of work as an agency to the client pharma side. This is something that I was completely oblivious to, that this sort of distinction between agencies and clients. And actually, you're meant to work in partnership with them, and it's it's what we call a strategic partnership. So it's nice that you can form, if you can sort of get on somebody else's wavelength and understand what they want, because we're producing materials in line with what they want. And I think if you're a PhD or a medic, you'll have you will tend to come from you'll have rigorous discipline, I would say, in the way that you write, you sit down to work, and all these sorts of things. And that's always important, because very often you need to just sit down and write something to produce it for a client, because clients will expect it. So you have to be able to have sort of staying power, if you like. You have to be resilient, because you can get feedback from clients that, for the vast majority, is very, very reasonable and friendly feedback, but can be a little bit terse sometimes, because they're under pressure and in a rush, and they're paying you to do a job, and you have to learn to take it on the chin. But I would argue that many of us have had terse responses from perhaps senior medics when we were training, or patients families, and you have to learn to not take it personally. And so I think that those are all the sort of attributes that you need. But I think, yes, if you've written 6 papers, 10 papers, that's hugely helpful, because you will be practiced in the art of writing. But if you're a medic and you haven't written a single one, assuming that you really genuinely do feel that you can write and would be happy to write, you are trained up on the job. It is heavily supervised, and you're never left alone. And you don't suddenly come in as an associate and have to produce a giant 200-slide training module that nobody's ever looked at. No, it'll go through, your senior writer will have a look at it, they'll send you back comments, you'll integrate those comments, that's your learning ticked off. You have an editor proof it, so any punctuation and grammar errors, you take in all those amends, that's more of your professional development ticked off, and all those things together train you up. So you're never left alone to sort of suddenly produce something yourself.
Excellent, and thank you. I hope people are listening to that, because you covered up an awful lot of points in there, which about the sort of working environment and so on, which I think is really important. And people have, whatever role they're coming into MedComms, you're part of this team. It's a group approach. You've got mentorship. Someone was asking about mentorship. You're being trained, you're being coached, you're being mentored. You're not left to do that whatever it is, piece of work on your own. With clients, you're supported and so on. And that's an important message to get across. So I think, Beth, you covered an awful lot of ground there, and I hope people are listening because that was excellent. I was going to ask a very blunt question here. And I don't know who wants to go with this. Natasha, I'm going to ask you, what the heck? Did your colleagues in medicine have a view on you leaving medicine and going into MedComms and more generally the pharma industry side of things? Can we just touch on this a little bit? Because it's always quite interesting to hear that sort of discussion. Natasha, I'm going to start with you if that's right.
Yeah, sure. I was a bit worried what you were going to come out with there initially, I'm not going to lie, but that I can handle. That's all right, thank you. Yeah, I actually didn't have any kind of difficulties with any of my colleagues. None of them had any kind of preconceived notions about what I was getting into, because, to be brutally honest, none of us had heard of medical communications.
Right.
Like I said, medical writing was a complete accident for me. I came across it on a job website and I fell into it that way. It wasn't that anyone else around me knew about it and pointed me in that direction. So actually, it was fairly easy to explain to other people what I was getting into, and I didn't kind of have any judgment from any colleagues, which I guess is what you're kind of getting at there, that there is potential for that moving from medicine into a more pharma related job. But yeah, I think medical writing and working for an agency in particular is a bit of an abstract concept to a lot of doctors. So I don't think a lot of my friends know what I do, but I'm okay with that.
Okay, okay, but that's interesting. I think there's an interesting area for discussion there. So that's interesting. Jessica, just briefly, I mean, would you say the same, or did you have any sort of reaction?
Yeah, I think so. Similar to Natasha, I think that a lot of people who I spoke to, it was more like, and they were more intrigued at what I was getting into. So like what it was that I was doing and quite why I was leaving. I think that conversations that I had, because you do build obviously really good relationships with your work colleagues, I think that comments were tended to be more supportive to make sure that I knew that I was leaving medicine and was this actually the right thing for me to do. And actually, I think that was really helpful, because having somebody ask you that actually does make you reassess it yourself.
Yeah.
So this was really helpful, but it's the same as Natasha. I think that it was more supportive and more of an interest in what I was doing rather than trying to be like a hindrance.
Okay, and Beth, I'm coming to you and broadening the conversation out if I can, because there is an issue for some medics about working for the industry. So have you seen it? How do you view it? Have you, and is there a difference working for the pharma company, which I think, touching on what Natasha said, we all know what a pharma company is, and some people have views on how that works. But an agency, even if you know anything about it, let alone if you don't know anything about it, is somehow not the same. I mean, so just with a broader view, Beth, have you seen any of those sorts of issues? Do you personally have had any sort of reaction from people around you, or do you not see that as a problem at all?
Yeah, I mean, sort of when I left medicine, I had a lot of kind of why would you do that? You've been in it so long. Why on earth would you even consider doing that? Are you throwing away your medical degree? I mean, this is predominantly medics, but even non-medics. You've trained all that time, and now suddenly you're doing something else. And I think, absolutely. I think you have to weather those comments a little bit and be, as sure as you can be that what you're doing feels like the right thing to do. That not that you can never go back. There's always, nothing is set in stone. I think that's really important to remember. But yeah, working agency side as well is I think it is different to client side. I mean, you have to realize that you're producing materials based around what someone is asking you to do, and you're absolutely there, as I mentioned earlier, you're in a strategic partnership, so you're there to try and offer your advice. You don't just say, they say do this and you say okay. A lot of the time you do, but you can say, well, actually, had you thought about doing it this way? And that's what they want usually. If you work client side, so within the pharma industry, I think there's more of perhaps you would be telling people what to do, but you'd be answerable to people as well. I can't speak really for pharma side because I've not worked on it before. There are a lot of medics who do work there, and I think this would be a different conversation. There's certainly room for medics working there. I think it's agency. I think you could progress very, very quickly if you work hard and you progress according to a set of criteria, as you have with any job, and that's always great too.
Okay, I think we're covering some interesting ground here. I don't want to go too much into any of these sort of rabbit holes, as it were, but there's several questions which I think we probably answered to a degree what people are asking about, so that's useful. Just Jenny's coming with a couple of questions. Revisiting slightly, but the application process, yes, writing tests. If you're coming as a writer, writing tests are more or less, a given, and for the medics that's the case as well. Interviews, which I guess are mostly being done online at the moment, but interviews, the sorts of things that we'd say to anybody coming to MedComms, you're going to be tested a little bit for attention to detail and things like that. I mean, those sorts of things are all going to come into what you're doing. Somewhere in there, I was just trying to see. Oh, sorry, there was a couple of questions coming in about the audiences. Just to clarify that and put it in some context, Porterhouse, because we've talked already pharmaceuticals, but Porterhouse, how broad is the client base? Is it pharma, obviously, but is it also medical devices? Do you do a lot of work specifically for patients? Just give me a little bit of context on that, and then we'll answer a couple of questions which go a bit further than that. But Beth, again, I'm going to ask you, just Porterhouse works for...
Yes, any and all of the above. I mean, it's all sorts of different. I mean, we can, as I say, we've got a huge pool of resource, particularly with our combined group of agencies. So there's kind of pretty much nothing that we haven't really tried to tackle before. I would argue with great success as well. So yeah, a whole range of things. But it is fair to say that the bulk of the work at Porterhouse is ultimately funded by the pharmaceutical industry, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. There are agencies, and Emily's asking a question here. There are agencies and companies that specifically work much more in patient information, for instance. There are agencies that work specifically in training type exercises. There are agencies who, that you can specialize in all sorts of ways. Porterhouse is quite a full service agency, but most of it is pharma. But there are other agencies that would be much more specific about patient, for instance, patient information specifically. So if Emily's looking around, do look around the array of agencies. And that's just a general comment for everybody. Agencies are different, and you need to understand and hopefully these webinars get a little bit more understanding of what's going on, and a little bit more the sorts of questions you can ask to ascertain from the agencies or the potential employers what they do. Yeah. A question, I'd like to go in this direction slightly. It came in before the event. It's also come in again today. And I don't know the answer to this question. I don't think you told me at the beginning, but are any of the three of you still doing any sort of clinical type placements? Are you keeping your hand in by doing something half a day a week or something? I don't think any of you are you? No.
Okay. And just as a general point, I mean, there are medics in the industry who do, and their argument is, well, that keeps me sort of, current, and it's useful because I can see what's going on, and so on. You've all said the same sort of thing. I'm going to be, again, slightly provocative about this, but what the heck. You've all said the same sort of thing, how you bring the skills and the knowledge and experience into the pot as part of the group, and that's hugely important. But 5-10 years down the line, frankly, do people go, well, that's fine, but you were out there 5-10 years ago? So do you think is there a discussion to be had around that? Or do you just go, oh, for goodness sake, Peter, I've been trained as a medic, I'll always be a medic, I'll always understand this? Or do you see what people are saying when they go, well, you're not out there now, sort of thing? Does anybody want to sort of talk? And as I say, knock me down if you want to, but Natasha, it looks like you want to say something, so I'm going to choose you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy to give my opinion. I know different people will have different opinions on this. But I think that the skills that are transferable to a career in MedComms are quite general and not necessarily things that will go out of date in terms of staying up to date with like the scientific knowledge and all of that. We do that day to day in our job. So it's not really that we're saying is kind of the key thing that a medical background will bring to a job as a medical writer. It's all of these other kind of communication skills and perspectives about what will resonate with healthcare professionals, what will resonate with patients, because we've worked with them for so long. And I personally don't feel like those skills will ever go out of date. I'm not sure how Jess and Beth feel about that, but that would be my opinion.
All right, Jess, go on. How do you feel about that slightly provocative question?
I completely agree with Natasha. I don't really have that much extra to add. I agree that the core principles and the communication skills and that sort of those aspects that we bring are going to remain with us. And as Natasha said, we're constantly keeping up to date. We're constantly looking at all different therapeutic areas based on the projects that we're working at. So I do feel like that's one of the things that I actually really like about working as a medical writer. I don't feel like I'm losing my medical knowledge. If anything, I'm gaining medical knowledge. So yeah.
Okay. And you're all obviously very enthusiastic. So I'm guessing you see your future in MedComms. Beth, have you got a view on what I've just been talking about, and or are you just going to go all of the above? And yes, I'm staying in MedComms because it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I am staying in MedComms because it's great. Absolutely. I think, you know, you have, I think you've got to know, as I say, I've lost my train of thought. What we just remind me what we were saying previously. What we were saying about memory.
Just about, frankly, whether 5 years down the line, have you got the medical transferable skills?
That was it. Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I think you. What's lovely about some of the projects that you do, it is some of the most up to the minute work and developments in therapeutic areas, etc., that you can possibly imagine. I mean, it's some real cutting edge stuff that we're doing, and they're drugs that are, you know, haven't even brought to market yet. And it's just, you know, you are at sort of it really is cutting edge therapy. And I would argue that, you know, I'm not even sure I'd have heard of some of these treatments had I still been working in medicine. And some of them, you know, I've been out for 5 years. Some of them were coming in when I started some of these sort of molecular therapies and things. And what's great as well is you do work for one client, and it kind of almost cross-pollinates your knowledge for another, because you then worked your own mind up in these sort of sometimes quite complex areas. I mean, you know, molecular biology can be quite complex, I think. And that works really well as well. So yes, all right, maybe you're not on the shop floor, as I always call it, in the way that you were, but there are other ways to keep up. And the other thing is, whether you're a medic or a non-medic in MedComms, you have to have the ability to learn a new therapy area very quickly. And doctors are great at assimilating huge quantities of information in no time at all. And as are, I would say, pretty much every writer that I work with is exactly the same, whether they're a medic or not. And it's just being able to understand that sort of scientific information quickly. But there's always someone you can ask. You can always ask. If you don't understand it, there is literally no shame in it. And I would definitely say that, you know, I was no molecular biologist when I started. I knew some of it. I mean, being a histopathologist, obviously, I would have to know some of that. But I've learned so much in the job. It's just incredible.
Okay, good. Right, look, I think that was all very positive, and I think we should stop there. Okay, on the positive note, good. And it's lovely to hear your insights. I think it's really, really useful for people listening just to listen to you talking. And there must be medics in the audience who are just going, yep, that sounds like the sort of environment I want to be in. And I'm understanding what we're trying to do. Go on, Beth, go on.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. I've just seen the question come up twice about GMC registration.
Okay, go on. Just cover that one specifically. Go on.
So you don't have to maintain your GMC registration at all. I have, that's my choice. Obviously, you have to pay for that privilege. But I think if you don't have a license, you don't need to revalidate. So if you relinquish your license, that's fine. But you don't need it to work in MedComms.
Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, cool. Right, I'm gonna cut it there. And I'm going to say thank you very much. For those of you watching us, we're not going to disappear for another 10 minutes or so. So don't you disappear. You can carry on. And we've got a few more questions in there we'll talk about. But for the purpose of the recording, I'd like to stop there. I know I can say on all your behalves that you're very happy, Beth, Jessica, and Natasha, for people to contact you via LinkedIn and via the Porterhouse website and so on to find out more about what you're doing and life as a medic and so on. So huge thank you to everybody for joining in today. I think it's really useful. I'm just going to ask everyone to give us a little wave as I stop the recording. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.